Hello and welcome back, and that is right, today we're returning to the subject of TerraMaster and TOS. TerraMaster operating system, the operating system that arrives with every TerraMaster NAS, and today we're going to be deep diving version 6. Now it's long since out of beta, it's completely available, and with the new 2025 and 2026 generation of devices rolling out, I wanted to make a dedicated video looking at this platform and ultimately, for many of you, letting you know where it sits and how it compares with something like Synology's DSM platform or QNAP's QTS or QUTS platform. What it does, what it doesn't, and ultimately where it's at right now. Because they've not been around in the market as long as Synology or QNAP, but TerraMaster have actually been around in the market considerably longer than relatively new players like Ugreen, like Unify, like iSCSI and the Zimmer OS, like lots of the other operating systems rolling out with NAS right now, thanks to open source players and paid semi-open source players like FINU OS and FNOS, and that's what we're going to look at. We're going to go through TOS. Now, if we head over to the screen now, you can see that I've already got a TerraMaster NAS set up. This is the F4 425 Plus. This retails for about 500 to 600 NECA. It's got an N150 CPU. It's got 16 gig of memory and 4 hard drives. This video is going to be broken down into a few different sections. These are to do with the user experience and the GUI. They're going to be going through storage, backups, the security, multimedia, and individual apps and services. I will highlight though that I won't be covering the surveillance application in today's video. That's because that I'm hoping to make a dedicated video soon, because frankly those that care about surveillance generally want to know about that more than anything else, and the sort of deep dive that I'm going to be doing now on their software, they're going to want that and longer on surveillance. It needs to be its own dedicated vid, the same thing I've done with ASUS, Synology, QNAP and more in the past. Also, I am going to be looking into the photo appliance with AI photo recognition, but I'm not going to be deep diving it too much. Next up, when it comes to the virtual machine application, because it's not an official TerraMaster appliance, so for example, if we go into the App Center, we look at which apps and services belong or are made in-house by TerraMaster, because it is not one of their own and VirtualBox already exists. I'm not going to be going into a lot of detail on that. It runs it, but again, I'm not going to give them the credit that VirtualBox truly deserves for that app and service. But first up, the UI, the user experience, the UX, whatever you want to call it, whatever you're coming into this for. I'm currently using this on the local area network with Zoom at 100% there. Now on the right hand side of the screen, you can pull up a nice dash. This gives you lots of widgets and real-time information. You can play around, move around to get real-time information at a glance. There is a mobile app to get hold of this. We're only going to be looking at the desktop appliance today. You can play around with this, by the way. You can add different widgets there and change the order, but most users are going to be, if they want to configure the system, go directly into the control panel. The control panel's pretty much got a button for everything. Now, I've talked about this in other videos. TOS, I would argue, suffers something of a design inconsistency problem. QNAP does as well, and it is something that Synology, one of the biggest players in the market, spend an awful lot of money on, and it's an inconsistency, and it's finding a line between graphics, text, too much information and too little. Case in point, if I go into the storage manager here with the storage pool, I've already created 3 pools of storage there, and I can find out real-time information. It's very text-based, but I can find out more information about it. If I go into the disk area, I've got the layout of the disks here. I've got 3 M.2s and 4 hard drives inside this system, and it's all laid out, but it really does find a poor balance there between text and graphical information. Further still, if we go into something like the resource monitor there, open it up in full screen, we've got lots of information there, finding out, what's going on with our CPU, what's going on with our services. If we go into the overview, the consistency in the graphical level, but in the text detail, it's pretty inconsistent. It's there, and it's nice to know I can get that real-time information if I need it, but I do think it is something where TerraMaster is still a little behind the curve. It's responsive, it does what it's supposed to do, and the controls, for the most part, are exactly where I expect them to be. But at the same time, I do think the UX may be a little intimidating for those new in this field. That said, there is no optional configuration or setting available on any other NAS brand that I don't have here. Right the way down to the hardware and power, I can configure, set up a UPS, putting disks into hibernation, light stuff like that, or going deep, whether it is reconfiguring my backups there, changing a lot of security settings that we'll talk about later on, changing regional settings there, configuring our cache quite detailed as well, and we will be going into storage soon, right the way down to different services that we want to enable there. And again, right the way through configuration, manipulation, it's all there at the fingertips. It's just presented in quite an intimidating fashion for those new to the field, with slightly fewer tutorials and hand-holding guidelines that some might like. But if you know what you're doing and you're prepared to do the searching, you will find every configuration option that you are ever going to need on this system. And in the web browser, everything is native. So whether it is you're using the inbuilt file manager, where, by the way, that file manager does allow you, by the way, to, view thumbnails, access a lot of the information on this system natively without using a file explorer you may have on your client system. It's all accessible here for you to use with native contextual right-click options that you can navigate. Now that goes right the way to the desktop there if you want to configure, say, the access that you want to be using, whether you're going to be utilizing two-factor authentication, changing the wallpaper, the screen, all that kind of stuff. It's all available to you. And again, all of it is native in the web browser, which is pretty impressive. And moving ever so slightly away from the web browser, it's worth highlighting that the client tool is still pretty darn good too. This is the Windows one I'm dealing with here, and it allows me to scan for multiple systems from there. If I want to use some of the synchronization settings, I can do that using this to find other servers on the network that I can migrate and manage synchronized connections between them. Whether it is that I'm going to be using some of the synchronization tasks that I've set up on my system, more on that later on, or if I'm just bridging together different systems, I can manage it here from on the desktop or using the client tool if I choose. And again, there is a mobile application as well if I choose to use. Now, storage management on the system. We've already looked at the File Explorer and we'll be coming back to that in a bit. But let's talk about traditional storage management. So if we go into the storage area there, we go down to the bottom, we've got our drives there. Setting up RAID configurations, creating new areas of storage is really straightforward. And we have a configuration tool here that, depending on the RAID configuration we're choosing to use, will adapt and tell us how much storage we're going to have. Again, I've already created multiple pools on this system. And from here, with these multiple pools, you can go ahead and enable different settings. So from here, I've already got a T-RAID here, which is their flexible RAID system that allows me to mix and match drives, something I really don't think the brand gets anywhere near enough credit for. But from that, I can also configure whether I want the drives to prioritize RAID rebuilding easily, just like any other drive NAS brand. But on top of that, I can enable fast repair that will allow the RAID rebuild to prioritize just the areas of space on the disk that had data and zero out the rest. When it comes to volume creation, alongside allowing me to create volumes on both storage pools and volumes on both hard drives and SSDs, as well as the utilization of caching, by the way, where I can use one of those multiple M.2 NVMe pools to assign one of these SSDs for read and write caching. On top of that, and interestingly, when I do create a volume area, and I've got two created, if I like, when I create a brand new pool, I can go ahead and use, let's do the word test there, go for next, I can enable write once, read many on the volume level. That allows me to ensure that once data is written into this volume that I'm transferring data onto, it cannot be accidentally or purposefully deleted or destroyed by something like ransomware for a given period of days, where if I choose to, no one can delete that data, or compliance mode where only an admin can do anything about it. This is great for archival long-term storage, and again, in the avoidance of something like ransomware. Now, when it comes to more traditional storage areas, like remote folders, or if I'm doing shared SMB folders, or just using a shared folder, from there I can go ahead and create a storage area. In that storage area, choose the volume I want to put it on, choose whether I want to use a recycle bin, but more importantly, I can choose whether I want to encrypt it. Again, another way to restrict access to those that aren't supposed to have access to those shared areas. And surprisingly rare in the world of storage, in modern NAS releases that have come out in the last few years, they do have support of iSCSI. So if I like, rather than using these raw storage areas that are already built into things like BTRFS or ext4 volumes, from here what I can choose to do is go ahead and create an iSCSI target and an iSCSI LUN. This will allow me to create a raw storage area where a local client device would treat that storage rather than a mapped network drive, but treat it like a native local drive, which is great for things like video editing and virtual machine deployment. The range of options open to you when it comes to bolting on local or remote storage is pretty diverse, but a lot of users are going to be doing this connection of multiple data sites for things like backup. So let's talk about that. Now, although there are multiple applications and services for backing up, on the desktop you can just go ahead straight away and select this icon here, and this is your one portal access point to the full range of backup, synchronization and mounting tools afforded to you in TOS. There's a diagram there letting you know just what apps and services are the ones you would use for different kinds of deployment, whether it is remote, whether it is local, or within system. But if we go through them in a little bit more detail, if we choose to, we can go ahead and use some of the local client applications, which, by the way, if you want, in the App Center, not Docker there, in the App Center, if you go through the range of listed applications and services and you want to download the client tool for, say, Windows or a mobile device, you can immediately download them from within their own App Center. You don't have to go via a third party. So, for example, if you wanted to download the local backup appliance, you can just go straight in here and download the appliance and client tool directly from within this and have it on your local system. It's a really smart way to do it rather than sending you off to other services. So again, whether it is you're going to be using Rsync to migrate and synchronize with other NAS devices in the local area network via an IP, you can do it. If you want to mount remote snapshots or run your own snapshots within your system and target your range of directories on the system, create a snapshot schedule, whether you want to lock snapshots, what you want the retention policy to be, you've got all of those options built in and they are native. And again, you can duplicate snapshots, you can create multiple timelines, and although these are nothing like a backup, it's still nice to have them there. Time Machine backups for Mac users is native. Centralized backup is native into the app and allows you to connect with physical servers, remote cloud servers, third-party file servers. If you are going to use PAAS and SAS VM mounting tools, which, by the way, you can't mount the VM in TOS, the options are there. Again, I'm not going to suggest that this app is as fleshed out or as feature-rich or as stable as something like Synology's Active Backup or even QNAP's offerings with Virtualization Station, the hypervisor appliance there. But it's closing the gap and the options are there. And again, the client tools and the tools you're going to need to synchronize on your local system can be obtained from here. And for those looking inside their system, things like Duple Backup allows you to back up within directories or USB or iSCSI devices or shared folders from within a single NAS system. I know that sounds counterintuitive for backups, and you're right, I wouldn't really call a backup of two areas of storage in the same system a backup, but there are utilities, there are users that might consider doing this. So it's nice to have that flexibility and the option for those users. Terra Synchronization to pin and file stream on local client devices can be managed here, comparable to something like Synology Drive. It's not as well centered, and the range of client applications is nowhere near as wide, say iOS and more, as you would find with Synology's offering, but it's still pretty good, and you can download the clients as needed there. Cloud synchronization is supported here, which allows you to bridge gaps with existing cloud services here on the platform, all within this single ecosystem, and create that multi-site backup and synchronization setup for your needs. It's all built in there, and then all of this with simple backup tools, which, although not presented with the flourish and some of these kind of slick UI and UX of Synology, is still pretty good for the price point we're talking. Now let's talk about security. We mentioned it earlier on that with individual accounts you can set up passwords, you can even change the password rules quite significantly, and also set up two-factor authentication, either using their own application or service or a third-party one. But on top of that, you can go in and adapt some of the other little bit more traditional security settings. So for example, they have got a security scanner built in here. So if you like, at any time, you can use the system via the security advisor to scan your system. And as you can see from an earlier scan, it lets you know that if you have certain file services enabled, if your password isn't strong enough, it will alert you and then directly tell you what you need to do to rectify that issue. So let's scan that in the background and come back to it in a moment. But in the meantime, if you choose to, you can change the login, log out policies. You can also set up auto block policies if you choose to, whether you want to use a third-party SSL certificate, if you want to adapt your firewall settings for certain ports and access, if you want to create auto block measures when the passwords are done wrong, and also auto block expiries for if you do want access after failure attempts to become enabled down the road. Again, the secure access protocol, if you do set your system up remarkably high security stakes, then of course it will limit some of the smoothness and the latency of your system overall with different apps and services affected, but it's still pretty good for what is always considered to be the budget NAS entry. But one of the things I always give a huge amount of credit for is isolation mode. This is a one-click option that will immediately disable third-party PHP. It will completely isolate and remove non-administrative users at the click of a button and completely sever outside network access, as well as disabling, as you can see there, other remote portal services that, although very useful, are traditionally one of the ways in which ransomware and other attacks have happened. And access via different ports, access via different applications, and access and privileges for individual users and groups is manageable very, very easily. Whether it is you're creating a brand new user and you want to change just what level these users have on the fly, you've got that option open to you there. Next up, let's talk about media. In some ways, it's both the strength and the weakness of TOS when it comes to media. Now, for example, as mentioned, their photo application here is pretty darn good, notwithstanding that it does scrape the metadata from the photos you upload that allows you to use that to create filters, allow you to create intelligent folders on the fly. Likewise, thanks to AI photo recognition and facial recognition and object recognition, it allows you to identify people early doors. So you can see here there's 542 photos that have got me on here, and it allows us to upload that easily onto the system and then immediately recognize images with me in them or others, as well as allow us to bridge those together. So for example, this one here, we allow ourselves to create another identity, and then from there we can then search our files and folders very quickly to find individual people, and then once we find those people in the same folders, synchronize them together. It's not foolproof, and we're still going to have to wait for Katie to be synchronized by the system there with the images, but further newer photos as they arrive in the system will then be put together. It's not perfect, and I do think there are better options out there, but it's not too shabby. With the AI photo recognition also scanning object recognition, so for example identifying things like food, and that by the way goes down all the way to video, which I was kind of impressed in some cases, but it didn't really impact the 4K and 8K stuff. Was still pretty good, and it's nice to have that object recognition when most of the photos on this system do not have a usable file name. The configuration and options for the AI recognition is all right. Again, it's not as diverse and wide as some of the other options in the market right now, but it's still pretty good for this application. And you can go for standard file folder access, or you can go for just simply browsing the whole thing and using some of that limited AI photo recognition. But I will say, if you do create a personal private space, file sharing, so for example, if we go into this photo here, there isn't a contextual right-click option there, which is a little disappointing. And if we do want to share this file, then we do need to click there, and then from there we can then start sharing that file. You can share it remotely, and you can set some rules for the sharing, for internal or external sharing there, things like passwords or number of usage, but still not too bad. But there are some other options in the market right now that I think do this better. But after that, media is not handled in a particularly exciting way, at least with first-party appliances. There is a UPnP and DLNA media server appliance that allows your stuff to get picked up on the local area network. There isn't a dedicated audio appliance. So again, there are some limits compared to some other alternatives in the market. Also, the HDMI output on TerraMaster appliances isn't utilized, so you can't directly output media via the HDMI via a parallel interface. But what there is support of natively is things like Plex and Jellyfin, applications that are immediately available in the App Center that allows you to browse and access media easily and allow you to use those existing services to stream media from your NAS outside. I can only assume that TerraMaster thought we are not going to build anything better than Plex and Jellyfin, and that's what people want to use, so we'll just facilitate access to those, and I can't really fault them for that. Otherwise, you can always use things like the Docker application and appliance to allow you to bridge other services as well. So whether that is you want to mount third-party photo, video, audio, smart home and more appliances as individual containers, you've got that option open to you with access to the full registry there if you choose to, and alongside the image registry for you to access and download the containerized appliances that you want to use. You can also go into the application center and use something like Portainer, which is just it's kind of an alternate wrapper, at least again without getting bogged down in semantics. You've got those options open to you. It's lovely. They found a balance. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's better than not having them at all. But what about when you need help? What about when you don't know what to do? Well, the support services, I've got good news and I've got bad news. If I start with the bad news, and again, bad is relative here, I will say there doesn't seem to be any native help and support. And by that, what I mean is, if you're hitting issues, and over here on the right hand side of the screen, as you can see, we've got our help icon. That help icon, if we click it, it opened up an online portal. That's not going to be great if you're running the system local. I kind of wish some of this stuff was natively in the system as an available directory and database, but still, at least you've got that option. On the other hand though, I really like the one-click issue report. So you can do multiple things here, notwithstanding generating a report that includes the logs of the system that you can directly email to TerraMaster. But from that, you can also enable things like debug mode. From that, you can also set up remote access as well on the system, where they can have the system set up for you that they can tap in remotely with the use of an authentication key. It's really nice stuff, but still, just keep in mind that that isn't something you should be enabling unless you really, really need it. Bottom line, I do think TerraMaster is doing an incredible job here given the affordability of a lot of their solutions. And with recent players entering the NAS market, again, Minis Forum, Arico, Ugreen, Unify, you name it, so many new players in the market right now. TerraMaster's software is still leagues ahead of those platforms, with the added benefit with their systems that you can use a third-party OS if you choose to. Is it perfect? Sod no. As mentioned, it is still very intimidating for the newbie, and although there is support of things like Tailscale and third-party remote access services, and you can use their own remote access services if you choose to, I will say, overall, this is a great platform that is still not quite up there with Synology DSM and QNAP, QTS and QUTS. All of the configuration options are there. They're just presented in a slightly more intimidating fashion. But if you can take the time to learn it, and I'd still argue this is way more user-friendly than something like TrueNAS or even Unraid for that matter, I think there's a lot to be learned here. Ultimately, TOS 6 is the best version of their software so far, but it's still not perfect. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know what you want to see in that surveillance video, because honestly, they've come a long way with this surveillance platform, and arguably, although it feels still nowhere near as flourished and fully featured and polished as Synology Surveillance Station or QNAP QVR Pro, it's getting there, and I can't wait to tell you about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.